But welcome to our first ever Circle Back Initiative webinar. Again, for those who didn't hear, apologies. I've lost my voice over the last week, so I'm squeaking a little bit. But I wanted to welcome Kathy from BAE Systems and Laura from Papercut Software. Kathy and Laura were they were both in the first sort of 2 or 3 companies to sign up for the initiative. So just want to do a quick intro. So Kathy, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Kathy Riak from BAE Systems. I'm 21 days old in a new role of Enterprise Resourcing Lead, but have been involved in resourcing and talent acquisition for many years at BAE Systems. And we're very pleased to have been one of the first groups to have signed up to the initiative and look forward to speaking with you today.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. And just give us a quick idea, what size is your team? How many people do you hire per year?
Sure. So in terms of roles filled to date, over 800 filled for the organisation. Number of vacancies still open and still progressing, but that's filled to date. And we currently have a team of 16. The team is all internal and it's a BAE Systems team, so we're not RPO. We've had some additional staff, fixed term, etc., come and go to support us with surge requirements, but currently that's 16.
Awesome. Great. Fantastic. And Laura?
Yes, hi everyone. Laura Payton from Papercut Software. So I'm at the other end of the spectrum, I suppose. We're a medium-sized technology company, software business, predominantly located in Australia, but we are global. So we're about 220 people worldwide. So still fairly small. I've been in the business for coming up to 3 years as the global talent lead for the business, and our team is still pretty small. It's growing, which is fantastic, but we're 2 full-timers and also our wonderful regional business partners who are located in the US and the UK are currently doing their own recruitment as well. In terms of number of roles filled, it does vary year to year. We did go through a short hiring freeze because of COVID-19 this year, so I don't have exact figures for this year, but previous years it's usually around the 80 per year, and constant pipelining and growth, especially in our tech teams here in Melbourne.
Awesome. Great. Thank you both. And those people on the webinar, we've got the Q&A box open, so if you want to ask any questions, please throw them into there, or put your hand up and we can come to you. And also the chat box is open as well, so feel free to talk in there. I might have to use that in a minute, actually. But this is a really free-flowing session, really. And the idea of it really was to sort of give a little bit of more context around what the Circle Back Initiative is all about, and where it's come from. And then part of the idea about the initiative is bringing these employers together to also share practice as well, so we can all learn about really good candidate experience, and it's something hopefully we're all passionate about because we're on this webinar. So the Circle Back Initiative started about 3.5, 4 months ago now, and it really came out of the back of a couple of different things, really. One was the work I was doing with Jobs for Australia, so we're actually coaching job seekers, and I can see some of the Jobs for Australia guys on this webinar, so hi to you guys. You're doing a great job. And we're actually spending a lot of time with job seekers on their CVs, on their interview prep, and I was seeing so much hope and time going into every single job application that they were making. So there was one lady one morning that I got on Zoom with, and she was so excited. She'd seen a role that was perfect for her. She said, "It's great timing. I'm going to spend 2.5 hours going through my CV and rebuilding it after this session. Going to spend a lot of time getting this application right." And my thought was, well, are you going to hear back? If you put all that time and effort in, are you going to hear back? We were seeing lots of anxiety and stress, and there's so many people out of work, unfortunately, at the moment. My thinking was, how can we change this first of all, change this mindset and terminology around that we're not going to get back to. We're only going to get back to shortlisted applicants, or if you don't hear from us within sort of 4 to 6 weeks, presume your application has been unsuccessful. So the first sort of stage with it really was, how can we start to talk about more positive language and say what we are going to do for candidates rather than what we're not going to do for candidates. And as I started to build that out, the standards that we've created sort of came into play a little bit more. We were able to look a little bit further down the recruitment process. So, and the other thing that really came out of it was I did a lot of research into candidate experience. And if you just simply Google candidate experience, most of the content that comes up is all about what's in it for the company. So what's in it for the organization? We know it protects brand. We know it keeps customers, or potentially keeps customers. You know, it creates customers. But actually, it was very little about what's in it for the candidate. So again, right now for me, you know, it's all about the candidate. It's all about really making sure they have a great experience, whether we really progress them into our recruitment process or they're at the very, very early stages. And I believe that employers have a duty really to respond and respect every application, because there's a person behind every single one. So really owning that go-to-market strategy. You know, if we decide and we choose to go out and advertise roles, we've got to sort of own the outcome, or both sides of the outcome of that choice. And so how can we do it? So this is all about bringing employers together to make this commitment under a initiative that candidates will start to hopefully recognize. So that's really the sort of background. We've got 5 standards that we've got in play, and we can talk about them a little bit later. But I'll come to you first, Laura. You know, what was the sort of reason that you signed up? Because you guys were really quick to come back and say, yeah, we're in.
I think we were so quick because it resonated so much, and it was something that we had already held in terms of a philosophy within our broader people experience team, and also something that really aligns with our company values. And I know that that can sound daggy sometimes, but I think it's important that you're authentic when you sign up to something like this, and it felt really authentic for us. 2 of our core values are caring and honesty, and we always look to extend that externally as well as internally. And that's not just in talent with candidates, it's also in product with partners, or with customers, and those sorts of things. So I thought it was a really good way to making that commitment more external and more well known. And it actually tied in really nicely with some work we were doing in the background around creating a commitment to candidates. And, you know, company philosophies and even maybe team practices or team philosophies are quite common. But when it came to talent acquisition, I thought, well, there's no point in us holding ourselves to a philosophy internally if the candidates don't know what they should expect us to do, and how, you know, what level of service or experience they should expect to receive. So we actually flipped it, and we created the commitment to candidates first, and then we built out our internal kind of philosophy and practices around how we would deliver on that. And feedback and timeliness, and honesty throughout the process, they're all really core parts of that commitment that we want to uphold. So it was really a no-brainer for us.
Awesome, great. And Kathy?
Again, no-brainer for us either. As soon as I saw it, to us, we thought, is there more to this? Because this is the way we have always behaved. Candidates always want more feedback. We would love to be able to give more feedback, but like many of you on the call, there is only so many hours in the day, so many members of the team. But you can do it. You just have to work in a way that's scalable. And we addressed this many years ago, putting in place just some really basic courtesy-based policies around dealing with candidates. And to be honest, this probably started for us, would be more than 10 years ago. We had, it was just some really simple errors that were happening, candidates being sent the wrong letters. And I stopped and said to the recruiters at the time, do you know what, we've got to think about it. there is a human being at the back of every one of these applications and these resumes. And at the time, our hiring volumes were so high and we had so many applicants, and we had a very small team. So it was a real challenge. But we said, we have to treat everybody as an individual. And for all the business benefits that you've already mentioned, Steve, those things are really important. Yep. But put yourself in the shoes of the person that applied, put all that effort in, wants to work for us, putting themselves at risk of, for their existing role, or it's not nice to be rejected. So everyone's making this effort. The least we can do is treat everybody as a body, as a human being. They're not just resumes, and they're not just names on the resumes. So we've had these policies in place, it almost feels like from day dot, and it really stems from just a common courtesy for other human beings.
Yeah, fantastic. Great. And in terms of sort of rolling this out, rolling the initiative out, when you sort of spoke to your teams about it, it sounds like they were already sort of following a lot of the, I mean, I know you guys were definitely meeting the standards and exceeding them in some space, but what's the recruiters' sort of feedback been on this?
Yeah, I think for us it was, to Kathy's point, something that we already had in place, but I think a really good reminder of why. And, to remember that in many cases, the candidate waiting for feedback, an hour feels like a day feels like a week. I mean, we've all applied for jobs in the past. We can put ourselves in that scenario and remember how we felt. And so it's something that was just brought to, I suppose, the forefront of our consciousness when we were talking about how we were going to manage these candidates. Starting your day with candidate feedback as an example, rather than waiting for you to tick off all of the tasks that might make you feel good. Putting that time in the calendar and scheduling that in is something that I've seen change, particularly with our talent partner here in Melbourne, who's dealing with incredibly high volume, and not only passive candidates, but active candidates as well. So trying to find that balance between how he responds to all of them. So scheduling that in the calendar was something that he's now made a commitment to each and every day, rather than it just being kind of a general thing that we know that we do. It's again, very intentional, and something that we've been able to talk about every time we catch up. The lovely thing is that the candidates have started to talk about it as well. So we've had a couple of people who have put in their pre-screening answers. I saw the Circle Back initiative on the ad. I looked into it. I think it's a fantastic reflection of your company values or your culture, and therefore I was extra excited to apply. So we're also able to draw back to that when we're giving the feedback, and so we've got a commitment to you to get back to you, and here is us doing that and showcasing that we actually walk the walk.
Awesome. Kathy, any comments on that?
I think our TA team was really excited because often we will say, hey guys, we've got an idea of how to improve our service. We've had some feedback that the candidates want more of this or more of the other. But when I found this and we signed up to it, I was able to go back to them, and I've actually got the email that I sent them that I said, I've signed up. You don't need to do anything other than just keep on doing the great job you're doing. So it was a really great reinforcement. And that's what I said. All we have to do is deliver against our existing commitments by getting back to people. That's easy, because it is something that every new TA specialist who joins our team, when they're trained in our processes, they don't know any different. That's just what we do. And so it was almost just like a little pat on the back that, wait, you're not asking me to do anything other than what I'm already doing now. And I said, no, just keep up the great work. And we do, we would love to do more. We would love to give people more feedback. There again, only so many hours in the day, but we definitely do shape it. So one of the things that our team is really proud of is that we do have additional candidate care experience in place for First Nations applicants and veterans. Being a defence organisation, that's that's the community that we're there to serve. And of course, we want to be an employer of choice for them. So no matter whether they get shortlisted or not, they all get a personal phone call. So it is going a little bit above in that regard. And the team are really proud because again, we're getting that type of feedback too, as Laura has. People thank you very much for spending that time. There'll always be people who are unhappy because they didn't get the job they wanted or not quite the amount of feedback that they wanted. But generally the tone has been positive. And so it's been just a really good pat on the back for the TA team.
Yeah, fantastic. Great. So one of the initiative standards, and this is probably one I have most conversations with employers who are looking to sign up, is the one around that every candidate interviewed face-to-face or via live video receives an outcome call or feedback call. Now that can be tricky at sort of at high volume. How have you guys sort of managed that? Kathy sort of alluded to it a little bit there, but Laura, Kathy, any other comments on sort of techniques or how you make sure that everyone that we interact with as on a human-to-human basis actually gets that call?
Laura,
Kathy.
do you want? Okay.
Yeah. Go on.
It's actually something that we've had in place. It almost feels like forever. That work on the basis that if you spoke to the candidate, whether you met them face-to-face or virtually, which of course has been the way we've met pretty much everybody this year, then if you've had that personal interaction, that the way you will then communicate the decision to them or the next step will be personally. Now, there are some cases where you try and you've tried someone 5 times. So we do say you've got to be a bit realistic. Send them a text and say, I'm trying to call you. But if we've invested the time to have whether it's a phone screen or a phone interview or a video interview or a face-to-face interview, then we can afford that small amount of time to make the phone call. You don't need to spend hours and hours. Again, it's a common courtesy. So if somebody has just applied and we've not actually engaged with them very personally, then of course, then we use our ATS and we use emails to communicate with people. We still tailor those, but that's the way we communicate. But if we've invested the time to interview you, well, we can certainly add a little bit more time to personally let you know the outcome.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I think that's commendable for a business of that size and that team as well. And I suppose it is about whether or not it's the priority for the talent team member to do that, because I find that often one of the challenges that talent teams face is that the more positive work is to continue the process with the people who are successful. And it almost becomes a checkbox exercise to get back to the people who are not progressing in the process. And so something that I personally invested a lot of time in was when we put in our new ATS when I first joined, was putting in as many email templates as possible. And we recently updated those email templates because of the situation we find ourselves in, where those phone calls are now live videos. That adds an extra level of connection and personal interaction with those candidates. So we've updated those to say, thank you for your time on the phone earlier. Here's a reminder of your feedback. Here's a link to our candidate experience survey, et cetera, et cetera. And that has been something that has been a bit of a shift for us, because the higher volume was at the phone screen stage and we were holding ourselves accountable for feedback via email. And now all of those initial screens are happening via live video, and we're now holding ourselves accountable to a bit more feedback. In some instances, it has been difficult to make that phone call. For example, I was recently training up our new business partner in the US, and we ended up splitting the candidates about halfway through the process because we had so many. So she was screening on her own, I was screening on my own, and I had to make a decision. Do I wait another, pretty much a day in their life, because I'm about to finish up for the day and it's going to be my personal time, but for them, they're about to start and they're going to potentially experience another day not hearing from me? Or can I kind of flip it a little bit and send them an email that has the summary of the feedback, and then offer a time in my calendar to talk through that in more detail? And I think that that's one of the ways you can think about these commitments is it's not, oh goodness gracious, I have to call every single person I've ever spoken to. It's about thinking about the context of the situation and what you would expect. I mean, we have the reasonable person test in, you know, HR law in Australia. What would a reasonable person expect in this situation? And I've interviewed for HR roles in the past where, first of all, the interview was completely unstructured, so I knew I was in for a bit of a ride anyway. And I didn't hear anything for 3 weeks, and that email was, sorry, we just hired someone else. And I went in for a face-to-face interview with this person. No feedback, nothing. So I think if your feedback is sincere and it's constructive for the candidate, phone call is the first port of call if you can. But more than anything, the candidate just wants to know where they're at. And that's something I talk to the team about all of the time. They just want an update. If the update is, you know, the hiring team hasn't had a chance to meet and discuss feedback of the candidates at this stage just yet, but we're scheduled to do that tomorrow, so you're likely to hear from us either later that day or the next day, that's an email. That doesn't have to be a phone call. So, you know, you can find time in your day to keep the candidate experience high, and then allow time for those phone calls to be made when they're really critical, when they'll be most appreciated by the candidates. And that's where it comes back to, for us, for our team, templating everything in our ATS. If I've sent an email more than once, it's now a template in our ATS, you know, with little sections to add in the individual context.
And I think the key point on one of the key points, there's some fantastic points there, Laura, is not using those templates that come sort of preloaded into those ATSs either, because they just don't sound human. And I've called a few out on LinkedIn over the last couple of months that are just, you can just tell that they're not written by a human. They are written by a human, but not humanized or in the right language. You also talk to me about some of the other transparency you have in your email templates that go out. Do you want to just cover that? Because I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, sometimes in email, but most typically a lot of the transparency happens during the interviews. So we would wrap up a screen, for example. So it's the first time that anyone has spoken to a Papercut employee. And we will let them know if they were the first person that we've spoken to, or if we've spoken to several people that week already and maybe we have a couple of more to go. And we'll let them know kind of the timeline of where they're at in the process. And we just feel as though that level of transparency also creates an opportunity for us to manage their expectations. So although you can put yourself in their shoes and be like, oh my goodness, there's so much anxiety waiting for an outcome, also get the candidate to empathize with you a little bit. Like, we're talking to a lot of people. This is obviously an important decision for us. We don't take this lightly. We're trying to find the right fit for not only a person who's going to come in and potentially have a career with Papercut, but also the team that we've already got. So I take the opportunity when we're explaining the rest of the process to also drop in potentially a roundabout figure of how many people are involved in that stage, potentially a roundabout figure of how many we expect to go into the next stage. And then that kind of just gets them started on that journey of, okay, Papercut's going to tell me how it is. Tell me like it is, and I'm going to get some pretty honest feedback or communication. So when we do go back to them and say, honestly, you were great, it just so happened that someone came along who had a specific skill set or capability, or worked maybe with one of our partners in the past, and that's what we based the decision on because we had to make a decision, that they can walk away and go, I have no reason to doubt that because there was so much transparency throughout the process.
Yeah, and you set those sort of expectations of this is the pool that we're talking to. Fantastic. Great. I guess the other standard that I get asked quite a lot on is that every single application, regardless of whether they move through to interview, will get an outcome response, an outcome email. And we know right now application numbers have just skyrocketed. And one of the questions I get asked quite a lot is, what strategies can we use to make sure that we're getting back to everyone when you've got sort of 600-700 applications or more, and multiple sort of requisitions coming through. Any sort of thoughts on on that. I've got some ideas, but I'd love to hear yours. Kathy, do you want to go first?
I think it obviously depends a little bit on the capability of your ATS, but even the most basic ATS will allow you to communicate with people en masse. So I can't really see any reason why you can't let people know. Even if you are a very small team with a basic ATS and 600 applications, you can communicate with them all. You might not be able to put as much time into tailoring the individual responses. We do have varying templates that we can use so we can be a bit more specific about why somebody hasn't gone through. Probably not quite as many templates as Laura, so I might hit her up for a couple of examples. But it's so simple. You can very politely and with a lot of dignity and courtesy respond to 600, 6,000 if you needed to, people at once. So I actually don't think there's any excuse. If you have no ATS whatsoever and you're getting 600 applications, you've got a business case to be made, because that's an absolute tragedy. But do you know what? You could use a mail merge type process into Outlook. So there are ways that you can get around it.
Yeah, and actually Seek the back end. If you haven't got an ATS and you're using Seek, the back end allows you to
definitely
do it. So yeah, Laura.
Yeah, we don't have a template for every single scenario, but like Kathy, we have thought about the main ones. So again, in the setup of our ATS, we took a lot of time to consider what they're called archive reasons in Lever. So you make that decision to no longer progress with that candidate. You have to, from a drop-down menu, pick your archive reason. And we're very specific. There's no such thing as not a cultural fit or anything airy-fairy like that. So it does actually force, in a nice way, the talent acquisition person to really consider, why am I archiving this person? And sometimes it's actually been a wonderful blessing, because even myself, I've gone to archive someone, I've gone, they're just not right. And I've looked at that drop-down menu and I've gone, hang on a minute, Laura, why is this person not right? Go back to the CV, have a look, because what are you going to say to them as to why you're not progressing? And we do have a general template, which, we call polite rejection. And in that template, we basically have a very clear section where we have, all of the templated response, but there's an area for you to explain just a little bit further why. And that takes 10 seconds. It's a sentence. So, unfortunately, we're not progressing with your application. And then there's a section to say, in this instance, for example, we might be looking for a product manager. In this instance, we are looking for someone who has had previous experience in a software as a service environment, who has potentially worked with various vendors or certain size customer base or whatever it might be. And they just don't have it. And, we might offer as well at the end of all of our templates, look, it's not a fit right now, but if things change, please keep an eye out. And we always encourage you to reapply. And, a lot of the time, just even that small amount that shows you've read their CV, that's it. That's all you have to show. It's like the LinkedIn in-mail classes I'm sure we've all been a part of. Personalize your in-mail so that they know you've actually looked at their profile and you're not just doing a search and a select all and send in-mail. But I completely empathize with businesses who are obviously dealing with a lot more volume than paper cut. The only thing I can say to try and, I suppose, help you understand why it still is a challenge for us is because when we talk about talent acquisition at Papercut, we're all a part of the broader people experience team, which means on any given day, 70% of my role could actually be more so in people operations. And we also run an initiative-based agile team. So our talent partners are actually doing a lot of project work as well. So they only have a limited amount of time in the day. And so having that preparedness with your templates and an understanding of how you're going to give feedback, forcing yourself to think why you're rejecting somebody, I think it does speed up the process a little bit. And, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to hold yourself accountable to it. It has to be important to you.
Yeah.
If it's not important to you, then you won't do it.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you won't get the candidates coming back. You won't get the candidates referring on other candidates. And you'll end up with a bunch of Glassdoor reviews about your interview process and how shitty it is.
Yeah.
Pardon my French.
Fantastic. Great. So I'm not sure if anybody's got any questions. We've got a few coming through. Paula, hi Paula. Paula from NCS has just signed up in the last couple of weeks. So thanks for that, Paula. Paula's asked, this one's for me, I think, do you have any agencies who have joined the initiative? No, not at the moment. So I've made it specifically for employers to start with, but there is an agency version coming. Just working with a couple of different agencies on what those standards might look like. I personally don't think the standards need to be any different, and I certainly want them to be as rigorous. But there is going to be an agency version coming out relatively soon.
I'd be happy to feed back into that, Steve.
Great.
Because I often test, and they know it, so it's very transparent, of course, honesty at Papercut. I often test the agency's preparation of the candidate by asking the candidate a lot of questions about how the agency's been treating them when we're in that initial interview. And I've caught out a few agencies who actually have never even picked up the phone and spoken to a candidate before they've arrived on our doorstep. So I think that's definitely a big one. I would love to see that industry be held accountable for.
We'll have a chat, Laura. Anyone else who wants to be involved in the build of that? This is a community sort of initiative, really. So anybody who wants to feedback and any ideas on what that might look like would be great.
I must say, disclaimer, we do work with a lot of agency partners who are wonderful and who do treat the candidates just as well as we do.
Yeah. James Wickham said, yeah, we're an agency, we're keen to join. And just to shout out for something else that James is doing, I don't know if you guys have come across the Candidate Coach. Really cool stuff that James is doing there. So have a look at his website, Candidate Coach. So it's giving candidates or employers can sign up, and I'm not selling it very well, James, you might have to do this for me, but employers can sign up and give access to candidates that are rejecting and give them career coaching, CV guidance and stuff like that. So really cool, have a look at that. Any other questions coming through?
I think Paul has made a really great point around, and it's something that I forgot to mention. If you're time poor and you can't give personalized feedback at that, very open end of the funnel at the beginning, offer to give feedback to those who want it. So sometimes people don't care because they are spray and pray approach, which we know still exists in the market, especially when we're dealing with a bit of a job loss crisis. But if you offer that and say, look, I've read your application, unfortunately it's not a fit, and you give some generalized feedback, offering to give them more feedback is always a good way to earn brownie points with the candidates as well. Again, you have to follow that up with an authentic intention to do so, because you'll only further damage your brand if you offer that and you don't find the time to follow up.
We actually do that as well, and in fact we implemented if you would like additional feedback, please don't hesitate to contact me. And if you'd like to give feedback on the recruitment process, I do recall when we proposed to include that, and the TA team had a bit of a conniption. Our phones will be ringing, we can't afford to speak to everybody. I said, I know, but I don't actually think that everyone's going to call. But let's just humour me. Let's just give it a go. And we all got on board. And in fact, people were not inundated. Yes, they took a few calls, but it was the people that actually really wanted to work for us. So they are people that you probably do want to cultivate, because they might be completely off the mark for that role. But if their passion and interest is there, they could be suitable for something else. So I just said, just humour me. And do you know what? If this turns out to be a train wreck, then we'll make a change. Exactly. We haven't made a change.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. That's a really great way of cultivating a real sort of live talent pool, right? And talent pipeline. It's, people that really, really do want to work for you. It's great. Really cool. Fantastic. So if anybody's interested in signing up for the initiative, it's really straightforward. So it's free to join this year. Next year, we're starting to look about what that might look like next year. I'll come to that in a bit. But it's free to join. So all you need to do is sign up and say that we're going to commit to these. It's a commitment this year. It's not an accreditation, really. It's a commitment that we're going to commit to getting back to every candidate, and we're going to meet these minimum criteria. Many of the organisations that are joining up are already exceeding some. I know there's a number of organisations right now that are working behind the scenes. This has been the catalyst for them to take away and build a bit of a small roadmap of what we can do differently, and we'll join later. Next year, there will always be a free or very, very low admin cost to join. I don't want candidate experience to be or cost to be a barrier to entry for employers to do this. Next year, we're looking at having probably tiered levels as well. So different employer levels, and there's different services behind that, but I'm still building that. It's almost all building the plane as we're flying it, because it was just an idea that I came up with, and it's just gone a bit crazy. We're also getting interest from companies in the US and UK, so we'll probably be getting it out beyond there as well. So, but I wanted Australia to be the first place to work on this, and it's all about, really, my goal is with Australia is really for us to be seen as, you know, a great place to apply for a job, a fair place to apply for a job, and this is just a small part of that journey. Okay, we don't have any other questions. Anybody else want to ask anything? Kathy, Laura, anything you want to sort of finish on or comment on, or anything that I've missed? Have you been able to
I would just say, if you're not signed up, sign up. Because I don't think it's that difficult. If you have to change a couple of processes, it is worth it. As Laura said, they're getting people commenting on the fact that they see that Papercut's part of the initiative. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to ask our TA specialists if they've heard that too. But we've been really proud to put that logo on our careers site. Just as a confirmation that this is our commitment to you, and it's a pretty basic commitment. But I would say jump on board. You might attract better and more candidates for your key roles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most powerful part for us, which has resulted in those comments from candidates, has been putting it as the final line in our job advertisements. So we don't have no agencies please, or only shortlisted candidates will be contacted. We have, we are a part of the Circle Back initiative. On the platforms where you can link, it does link out to what the initiative is. Obviously, we're aware that it's not incredibly well known, amongst candidates. But the more employers that we have sign up, and the more employers who will openly share that, maybe write a blog when you first join up and have that pushed out through your company socials, or maybe when you go to make your next career page change, which is what we're doing, we're going to add Circle Back initiative as a broader update. So we'll push out, we've got a fancy new update of our careers page, check it out. And also, by the way, check out the Circle Back initiative. I think that will be the way that we can create a bit of a groundswell within the industry to not only be able to recognise other employers who hold similar candidate experience values to, as us, but also the candidates can start doing things like researching who is a Circle Back initiative employer, much like they do with, Great Place to Work and Best Place to Work lists and all of those sorts of things. And you may find that people actually start targeting your organisation to apply because they get a sense of how they're going to be treated. Yeah,
great. Fantastic. A couple of comments that come through. Kim said, love the idea to seek feedback from the recruitment process. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the best ways to learn about our recruitment process is from the candidates that are going through it, right? And then Paula, Paula signed up in the last couple of weeks. She's taught all of her hiring managers about the initiative, and they're all committed to get back to me within 24 hours after interview with their interview notes, including a summary, and I can use to go back to the candidate with.
Perfect.
So that's another great catalyst of improving your processes with this outcome in mind. I mean, it's fantastic.
That's actually a really good point, and something that we covered recently in the interview training that we've put out to our interviewers. So at Papercut, we don't have hiring managers. We have typically someone who acts as a hiring lead, but we do a lot of peer-based interviewing, because people generally join, you know, those more of those squad type teams that are constantly changing, so you don't always have a consistent lead. And by explaining our commitment to the candidates, we're able to then mirror what that means for our process internally. So in order to deliver on this commitment, we need you to commit to this. And that is filling out your feedback forms, putting in notes. So at the end of our feedback forms, instead of having general comments section in the template, we have comments and feedback for candidate. So we actually ask them to put into words what they would say to the candidate, and we're able to deliver that message. And oftentimes when we get down to the pointy end, it might be a role where only 2 people were in the final round. We'll also encourage the hiring lead to make that phone call for the person who wasn't successful, so that they can actually get any more in-depth feedback that they might want, which is more so role or role specific, and not just feeling as though the general HR or talent person is just telling them, you know, why they didn't get it. They can ask questions back. You know, what might I need to do in the future? Or I want a role like yours. How did you get it? You know, any of those sorts of things. So we encourage our hiring leads to get involved as much as possible.
Awesome. Great. Another comment from Paula. Paula, you are now on the board to come to the next webinar and be a panelist, because there's some brilliant comments you're coming through with. Yeah, so the logo is on our careers page and on LinkedIn pages too. And she's also put, yeah, you can't get a logo on the job ads on LinkedIn yet, but that's fine. You know, it's not just about the logo. It's about, you know, if we can use that wording and just making that small line commitment. You know, it's a brand commitment, it's a brand promise. Wherever you can do that would be great. And actually, we're seeing a number of the employers that have signed up using the logo in their email signatures, so candidates can see that when it goes out. But wherever you feel you want to use it to sort of really position your commitment, and it's your commitment, it's not mine, it's your commitment, right? I'm just bringing it together. You guys are doing the hard work. But thanks everyone for joining. We've got 20, oh, Katie, sorry, another one's just come through. Sorry, Katie. I know this is pretty basic, but for medium to large teams, emphasis adding feedback notes on their candidate care, so the next recruiter team member can leverage other conversations to maintain high candidate care. It's simple, but often missed.
That's actually something that we struggle with in a small team, because often the recruiter is like, well, I don't need to write a note for anybody else because I'm the person dealing with this candidate.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you're probably not going to deal with them if they apply in 12 to 18 months time, because you're probably going to be focused on another area, or, you know, you may not be with us because you've grown, whatever it might be. And that's a struggle. So I am actually would love to hear from anybody how they get their teams to put the comments in, because it's so easy in our ATS. It stays at the top of the screen everywhere through the candidate profile that you go between, and yet I still can't get the notes in. However, I must say, if that is an issue, the one way that we do get around it and are able to paint that picture is with the screening forms. So the feedback forms templates that you have, put in questions that force your recruiters to explain the outcome and what's happening next and any feedback that they had. And then that way you can go and look at old feedback templates that were filled out and find out, you know, kind of what the journey was with that candidate. And then the archive reason that we use also is incredibly important. So we have one, for example, that is suitable for another role, or competitive pool/pipeline. And so that's something where we can, you know, very quickly go fishing for candidates we've spoken to before that we might want to follow up with.
Yeah, and that sort of direct proactive sourcing from your talent pool, if you've got the rich history there's nothing better than a personalized, you know, LinkedIn message out or whatever it might be, saying, hey, look, we spoke 3 years ago, or you came to us 3 years ago or 2 years ago, wasn't quite right, or whatever it is. But that direct approach is very, very different to, hey, look, we've got an opportunity. Would you be interested? You've been sitting in our talent pool. Having that history behind is so valuable.
I don't think there's a silver bullet. Some people are good at what they would deem that to be the admin of the process. Some people are good at that. Most are not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Delaney's just made a comment. In terms of ensuring the TA folks put in notes, I've previously made it a performance KPI that I measured, and that seemed to do the trick.
Yeah, I don't really feel like going back and reading all through the notes though, Delaney. So no, I'm kidding. No, it's a good point and something that I can thread through conversations with the team to make sure they're up to date.
Yeah.
And to Belinda's question, I'm using Lever, which is a pretty close comparison to Greenhouse. But we went with Lever at the end of the day, and pretty happy with them. They're good if you commit the time to setting it up in a way that really works for you and is really thorough.
And we use Springboard. So its predecessor was Recruit ASP. Vendor is People Scout, based in Sydney.
Yeah. And
we have done for, gosh, coming up to, we're in our 11th year.
Wow.
Awesome. I did do a post early on in the initiative just saying which ATSs were, I didn't say which employer was using which ATS, but the ATSs that were being used by the employers. I might update that now actually, because there's some more. So if you're interested in seeing which ATSs the Circle Back Initiative employers are using, I'll do a post on that, and you can go and do some.
I do. To Kathy's point earlier around having a business case for an ATS as well, like it does save you a lot of time. When I implemented our ATS, within 3 months, I went back to our HRD and said, I honestly believe that I've gotten 60 to 70% efficiency gains day on day, just through small things like calendar integrations where the candidates can book themselves in. So that's a phone call you can strike off the list and put a candidate feedback phone call in its place. So, organising interviews and sending out emails en masse and all of those sorts of things are incredible efficiency gains you can make in order to find that time for the personal touch and the phone calls and the feedback.
Cool. Awesome. Paula's put, she's in the market for an ATS. We don't have any ATS salespeople on here, I don't think. Paula, but I'm sure some of us will give you some recommendations on.
I think that, Paula, you're part of Talent Table. I believe that there is a document that's circling around that has a lot of information on research that a lot of us have done on ATSs. So might be something to pop in the WhatsApp group.
Yeah, I think that came out again a couple of days ago, didn't it? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, fantastic. I don't think we've got any other questions. But thank you guys for Kathy and Laura for joining us. It's brilliant to have you on board, and thank you for your
pleasure.
Thank you for all those that have joined this webinar as well. It's the first one we've done. My voice is going to give up in any second, but I can see there's lots of the, we've already got a number of the people on today that are already Circle Back Initiative employees. So thank you guys for signing up as well. And I know there's someone here that are looking at it as well. So really appreciate your time. If you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. But we'll let you get on with your days and have a bit of lunch if it's lunchtime. Thanks, Michael, for your feedback. Cheers.
Yeah, and look forward to future webinars where we can hear from other employers and we can get their tips and tricks as well, and just continue to improve as an industry.
Yeah, Paula, get ready because I'm coming to ask you to join the next one.
Fantastic.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks all. Have a great day. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.